On June 23rd, 2018, 12 boys went into a cave after football practice. They planned to be inside for 1 hour. They brought no food, no extra water. Nobody even told their parents where they were going. 18 days later, the entire world was watching as they came out one by one. Unconscious, handcuffed, drugged, being dragged through pitch-black flooded tunnels by divers. And here's the part nobody talks about. The rescue almost didn't happen. And the reason it worked had nothing to do with the technology, the Navy SEALs, or the 10,000 volunteers outside. It came down to one 25-year-old coach and something he learned in a monastery. The Tham Luang cave in northern Thailand is one of the longest cave systems in the country, 10 kilometers of tunnels snaking under a mountain. And there's a sign at the entrance that says, "Do not enter between July and November, monsoon season." They went in on June 23rd. The cave was dry. The plan was simple. Go in, look around, come back out. The coach was 25. The boys were between 11 and 16. They'd done this kind of thing before. About an hour in, someone at the front of the group pulled the guide rope twice, the signal to turn back. They turned back and found water. In the time they'd been exploring, monsoon rain had begun falling outside. The cave had flooded. Their only exit was gone. They did the only thing they could do. They went deeper, looking for higher ground, until they found a small rock shelf about 4 kilometers inside the mountain, above the waterline, just barely. And they sat there, in complete darkness, with no food, no way to communicate, no idea if anyone was even looking for them. Outside, the search began immediately, but Tham Luang was fighting back. Every time divers tried to enter, the water rose. Visibility inside was described as swimming through cold coffee. Currents so strong they could rip equipment off your body. Tunnels so narrow you had to take off your oxygen tank and push it ahead of you. After 4 days, nothing. After 7 days, nothing. Most people at the base camp had quietly stopped believing the boys were alive. 9 days of no food, no light, oxygen levels dropping. Here is where the coach becomes the most important person in this story. His name was Ekapol Chanthawong. Everyone called him Coach Ek. And before he became a football coach, he had spent nearly 10 years living as a Buddhist monk. In the cave, with 12 terrified boys and no way out, Coach Ek did what he knew. He taught them to meditate, breathe in slowly, hold, release, again. This sounds like a feel-good detail. It wasn't. It was literally keeping them alive. Here's why. The cave's oxygen level had dropped from the normal 21% down to 15%. 15% is the minimum level needed to sustain human life. Any lower, and they would start losing consciousness. Meditation slows your heart rate, your breathing, and your metabolism. It reduces oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide output. In a sealed cave with dropping oxygen, this was the difference between the boys being found alive or not being found at all. When the British divers finally broke through on day 10, they found the boys sitting calmly in the dark, meditating. One boy's mother watching the footage later said, "Look at how calm they were. No one was crying or anything. It was astonishing." Finding them was the easy part. Now came the actual problem. How do you get 12 boys, none of whom had ever dived before, through 4 kilometers of flooded tunnels, zero visibility, currents strong enough to kill an experienced diver through gaps so narrow that in some places you have to go completely vertical just to squeeze through? The options were discussed at the highest level. Drill down from above, the mountain was too thick. Wait for the water to recede? Monsoon season had just started. It would get worse before it got better, and the oxygen was already at 15%. Teach the boys to dive? The fastest anyone has ever learned to dive is weeks. They had days, and even trained divers were dying in there. Saman Kunan, a 37-year-old former Thai Navy SEAL, died delivering oxygen tanks inside the cave when he ran out of air on his way back. A statue of him now stands at the cave entrance. If a former Navy SEAL couldn't make it through, what chance did an 11-year-old have? The answer that nobody wanted to say out loud was none, unless you changed the problem entirely. An Australian anesthetist named Richard Harris, who also happened to be an expert cave diver, came up with the solution. Don't teach the boys to dive. Knock them unconscious and carry them out. Each boy was given a sedative to swallow, then injected with ketamine in each leg until he fell unconscious. Ketamine, a drug that produces a state somewhere between sleep and dissociation. Fast-acting, controllable, used in emergency rooms on children worldwide. Then, the boy was handcuffed with cables placed around his wrists and tied behind him so he couldn't instinctively grab at his mask or thrash in the water and drown himself, then placed face up on top of an oxygen cylinder, and pulled through the dark. At each air chamber on the route, the diver would surface and check, is the boy still alive, still breathing, still sedated enough? If the boy was twitching, inject more ketamine. The diver doing this injection was not a doctor. He'd been taught by Harris that morning. The Thai government initially refused to approve this plan. Too risky. If a boy died underwater during the rescue, the international backlash would be catastrophic. catastrophic. A cave diver who spoke Thai spent hours convincing authorities there was simply no other option. The oxygen wasn't going to wait. They approved it. Now it's July 8th. 4 boys on the first day, 4 more on the second. The last 4, and the coach on the third. Each journey took approximately 3 hours from the boys' ledge to the cave mouth. 13 separate 3-hour trips through black water. Every single one of them worked. The parents had been told their sons would be swimming to safety. The reality, unconscious, handcuffed, dragged through flooded tunnels, was kept quiet until it was over. When the last boy surfaced, the Thai Navy SEALs posted on their Facebook page, "We are not sure if this is a miracle, a science, or what. All 13 wild boars are now out of the cave. Everyone is safe." 2 rescuers died. Saman Kunan during the operation. A second diver, Beirut Pakbara, died the following year from a blood infection he contracted inside the cave. Here's what stays with me about this story. 10,000 people showed up to help. Volunteers, military, divers from 17 countries, engineers, doctors, pump operators, farmers who let their fields flood so the water could be diverted away from the cave. All of that was outside. Inside, it was 12 boys, a 25-year-old coach, and 10 years he'd spent in a monastery learning how to breathe. The rescue that the world called impossible wasn't won by the technology or the military. It was won in the dark, in the silence, by boys who didn't panic.